Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Happy Friday. Uh, Hopefully, it's going to be a great day for you and a great weekend. A couple of full page of notes as always. A couple of things. The first one, I debated whether to say this or not, but I think I want to just put it out there, just in case there's any questions. Please don't inject yourself with Lysol. That's not what Lysol is made for. So don't do that. That's not funny. That's not a good idea. After that, lots of things going on. I think it is pretty clear that the mortgage market is, I guess I'll say, under stress. We talked about some pretty scary numbers earlier in the week, and they've only gotten worse, and they'll probably be getting worse for several weeks to come. And that is what I'm talking about is forbearance. Hello, how are you from California? Earlier, I talked about 3 million people in forbearance. 1 week later, 4.5 business days, we're now at 3.4 million. It was an increase of 477,000 individuals, 9% jump in 1 week. 8.9% of FHA buyers are now in forbearance. Almost 1 in 10. That is unfathomable. Again, FHA often, not always, but often used as a first-time buyer program, often used with 3.5% down. Maybe these buyers stretched the most. You don't know, but we're going to have to ask these questions. I think it is also very clear that some people have asked for forbearance that don't technically need it, meaning they're still employed. I think what they're going to find is, again, forbearance is not the cure-all. There is a dark side to it. It might feel good to ask for it, but if you don't need it, I think there'll be stories in 90 days about folks that did that wish they hadn't. But if you do need it, that's why it's there. It's where it's absolutely a great idea, right? If you've been impacted by this and your significant other, family has lost employment and are on unemployment, every lifeline is helpful. And if you need it, by all means, take it. I'm just talking to the few people out there. It's hard to guess, right? 3.4 million folks. Even if it's 500,000 that asked for it that aren't yet unemployed, but they're nervous, I think that's gonna hurt later, because I do see short sales and foreclosures coming up as we work our way through this. It will be messy because you get 90 days and then 6 months and 12 months. I think the real outcome of this is, I think lending changes forever. I think lending rules change. I think mortgage rates change. And I don't think they change to help us. I think they become more expensive and more restrictive. There's just human nature to always remember the last emergency, and people react and plan to that, even though by all accounts, the last one was 1918, the Spanish flu, but people are going to remember this. So there's going to be a time where, lending becomes more difficult, meaning tighter, and interest rates, I think, go up, which probably helps banks long-term, because they'll get a few years of this just extra profit, because I don't see the Fed raising rates for, could be a decade. So that'll be interesting. Some interesting news coming from Zillow. Again, this is a real estate investing channel first and foremost. So Zillow talked about 32% drop in, they called it contract signings. I'll call it pending. It means basically where the seller and the buyer have agreed. There's still inspections, still appraisals, right? So it's that 30, 45 day window between signing and close. So deals still fall apart. But they talked about 32% drop in those. But they talked about a 6.2% week-on-week gain. So I'm just trying to figure out what that might mean, right? So we had a 32% drop annually, meaning last week to a year ago, same week. But week on week, we saw a 6.2% increase. Part of me believes, part of me believes that number is almost artificially high, because I think the denominator is so much smaller. I just think there are less homes out there. So an artificial pop of 15 or 150 or whatever it is kind of skews that number and makes 6.2%. I bet if we talked about absolute numbers, you and I would be like, who cares? Interesting that they did a survey of real estate agents and realtors, and 74% of them indicated their sellers are not dropping prices. Take that survey in a month is my only thoughts, because again, sellers remember yesterday and buyers remember tomorrow, and we are in that gray area right now. So that will be interesting. One of the big things I took from this is I finally saw an analyst talk about what you and I have been talking about. This first came up 2 weeks ago when we were talking with the Fresno agent, Michael Hernandez. And we were both surprised that listings were up, or at least the listings weren't down as much as we suspected. But when we dug into the number, there was a wave of new construction coming in. And that is clearly what is artificially keeping listings high. It's now being reported that new constructions listings exceed existing homes. That's not normal. That does not happen normally. Yes, I do believe creative financing will eventually become, I don't know, norm's a stretch. Norm to me means, more than 50%. I believe creative financing will be a significant element of the real estate investing market, probably starting in the summer and probably going on for 2 years at least. I don't know that it ever becomes the norm. Just wild guess. It could be 15 to 20% of transactions. So if that's your definition of norm, yeah, I think so. I still think lending, there's still deals being done. So I still think traditional loans will be the norm. It'll just be 50% instead of 90%. So interesting. A couple of things else I'm looking about. Amex, just another, I'll call them financial institution, putting up a loss reserve, and they chose $2.6 billion. Again, as a legacy accountant, some of these loss reserves that companies are putting down, I assume they're doing it because they want to balance out Q3, Q4. Now, they can't tell us that. It's illegal. But they can use wild assumptions to create these second derivative kind of guesses, and then they'll ratchet it back, right? If it's 2 deviations and then it's only 1 deviation, they can manage the numbers later. They can't tell you that. I was in accounting. I saw it happen all the time. So that is coming. We got to pay attention to other countries now as they unwind and they kind of flex their muscle to get out. And we got to pay attention to Germany. Germany has had their stores open all week, or they opened this week. I shouldn't say all week because I don't know what day they opened, but they did open this week, the article said, and nobody's showing up. We have a confidence problem. That's what this channel is about, right? Cost of capital, access to capital, consumer confidence. Consumers are scared. They are not coming out. So there is, we're going to have to deal with that and realize, hey, first off, let's wish Georgia some luck. I understand what is it? It's already 10 o'clock there. So some of their businesses are open. Let's wish them luck. But what we're seeing in Germany is people aren't showing up. They're not going to the clothing stores and malls and things. So we got to pay attention to that. I think it's becoming increasingly obvious. Something else we talked about on this channel a couple of weeks ago, that we're going to have a year to 18 months of deflation as we work this out. There's just excess capacity everywhere. So deflation is going to be the theme for the next 18 months, which we are not used to. It would be interesting to see how the Fed operates to that, right? Do they go negative on interest rates, for example, which would be frankly unimaginable to me, but it is possible. And then at some point, we're going to have both inflation and changes to taxes. I think it is very obvious that the tax code will have to change to pay for this. Not only will tax rates go up, but you can expect a pretty vehement attack on tax deductions. In the real estate world, is it possible that the 1031 exchange goes away? Possible. We'll see. Is it possible that expenses go away for owning investment properties? No, that's a business. But could the 1031 exchange be removed? Could they raise capital gains taxes? Absolutely. In California, a once often thought of tax change that could go away is Prop 13. Prop 13 really could go away in California, which would hurt lots and lots of people. Next up, gold and silver. I get asked all the time for my thoughts on gold and silver. I am not an ETF or index fan of gold or silver, right? If you're going to own it, I always say own it, right? Own the physical thing. I don't know, I think I have a couple ounces of gold and several hundred ounces of silver. Those were bought decades ago that I just kept. But that's what I like. Enough of you have asked. I thought I should address that. What else do I got for you? The other thing I think about is what could change. And one of those things that could change is, can you imagine a world where professional athletes have their salaries cut in half? I can, right? There's going to be so many changes after this event. Advertising is down. Events probably won't be happening in mass for a year. Television rights probably aren't going to be as lucrative as they were. So I wonder if future athletes, we've seen the top at least for a decade or so. So lots of interesting stuff going on. So at the end of the day, it's Friday. I guess the last thing to point out is this is not one of those Fridays where I think people will sell going into the weekend. I think we know most of the bad news. I think the health news is actually, generally speaking, getting better. So there's not that downside risk. I do think that we will the economic data is still horrible, but that's reported Monday through Friday. So again, I don't see the huge rush to get flat, and that's very different than 6-8 weeks ago when I was telling you sell on Fridays because you just don't know what's going to happen Saturday and Sunday. I don't see the same need right now, so that's interesting. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to put together a couple of more live streams. Actually, one might be a PowerPoint. I'm not sure how to do it, but so many people talk about how do you become a millionaire. I thought I would just outline how you do that in real estate investing, and this is not a millionaire net worth. This is how do you get to $1 million in the bank. So as you will see in the presentation, it's taking advantage of the cycle. It is taking advantage of assets that are depressed and then inflated. And frankly, you got to sell, right? Pigs, what is it? Bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So that's something I've been playing with the last 3 or 4 days. So I am going to put that out there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're doing creative financing, you got to make sure you take advantage of or not take advantage. You support the person you're buying it from. That is not acceptable to screw them at all. Thank you for pointing that out. So at the end of the day, let's wish Georgia some luck. If you're somewhere in the country and the weather is nice, get some sun. Make sure you have social distancing. And at the end of the day, of course, take care of yourself.